How can love and guilt live in the same heart? Claire Thompson once believed she understood love, the steady, gentle kind that builds a home, raises children, and lasts forever. But after her husband Daniel walked out 3 years ago, her world had gone quiet. The laughter that once filled their little house in Oregon was replaced by the hum of the refrigerator and the ticking of the wall clock. She told herself she was fine, that she didn't need anyone. But every evening, when she set the dinner table for one, the silence told her otherwise. Her son Ethan had grown into a young man now, 23, tall, thoughtful, with the same soft brown eyes his father once had. He was studying architecture in the city, but every few weeks he'd drive home to visit her. Claire lived for those weekends. She cooked his favorite meals, washed his clothes even though he asked her not to, and sat with him late at night talking about his dreams. Their bond was strong, maybe too strong. What happens when comfort starts to feel like something else? It began subtly. The way he noticed her new haircut. The way she smiled more when he was around. The way they'd both linger at the dinner table, sharing quiet moments that felt warmer than they should. She tried to ignore it, pushing away the strange flutter in her chest every time his hand brushed hers when they passed dishes, but the feeling didn't go away. It grew. One rainy Friday, Ethan came home early. The storm outside roared as thunder rolled across the sky. Claire made cocoa, and they sat together in the living room, wrapped in the soft glow of the fireplace. For the first time in years, she didn't feel lonely. Ethan talked about his projects, how hard life was in the city, how people pretended to care but never really did. Claire listened quietly, her heart aching for him, for his kindness, his sensitivity, his loneliness that mirrored her own. "You work too hard," she said gently. He smiled faintly. "So do you." The room went silent again, but it wasn't an uncomfortable silence. It was heavy, almost electric. The storm outside was nothing compared to the quiet storm between them. Can loneliness trick the heart into seeing love? The next few weeks, things began to change. Ethan stayed longer after each visit. He started fixing things around the house. The broken garden fence, the leaky kitchen tap, the old porch light that hadn't worked in years. Every time she thanked him, he'd shrug it off with a smile. But what she didn't realize was that her gratitude, her laughter, her warmth, they filled a space in his life he didn't even know was empty. One evening, while unpacking groceries together, their hands touched again. This time, neither pulled away. For a moment, they just stood there, frozen, eyes locked. Claire felt a shiver run down her spine, not from fear but from confusion, a feeling that something sacred had shifted between them. She turned away quickly, pretending to organize the counter. "You should get some rest," she said softly. Ethan didn't move. He just looked at her for a long moment before asking, almost in a whisper, "Mom, do you ever miss being loved?" The words hit her harder than thunder. Her heart began to race. She didn't know what to say. Because she did. She missed it deeply. The laughter, the affection, the feeling of being seen, of being wanted. But not like this. Not from him. She managed to smile. "You shouldn't ask things like that." "Why not?" he said quietly. "It's true, isn't it?" Claire turned toward him then. His face was gentle, his expression sincere. He wasn't being disrespectful. He was being honest, heartbreakingly honest. She could see the loneliness in his eyes, the same loneliness that lived inside her. It scared her. She stepped closer, intending to hug him, to comfort him like a mother should. But something inside her froze. She stopped herself. The air between them felt fragile, dangerous, like one wrong move could shatter everything. "I do miss it," she finally whispered. "But some things are better left in the past." Ethan nodded, but his eyes said otherwise. There was a depth there, a longing she didn't know how to face. What if the love you needed came from the one person you couldn't have it from? That night, after Ethan went to bed, Claire sat alone by the fire. The storm outside had passed, but inside her heart, the clouds hadn't cleared. She replayed his words again and again. "Do you ever miss being loved?" She wanted to forget them, but she couldn't. She remembered the years with Daniel, the promises, the laughter, the slow unraveling of affection, until nothing was left but indifference. He had left her for someone else, younger, livelier. She had spent 3 years trying to rebuild herself, trying to prove she didn't need a man to feel whole. But now, with Ethan's question echoing in her mind, she realized how empty she still was. The next morning, she tried to act normal. She made breakfast, asked him about his classes, smiled when he told her stories. But deep down, something had changed. Every glance, every word between them felt heavier, slower, more charged than before. That evening, Ethan found her sitting on the porch watching the sunset. He sat beside her quietly. After a long silence, he said, "You deserve to be happy, Mom." She smiled faintly. "So do you." He turned to her, his gaze steady. "Maybe happiness isn't about what's right or wrong. Maybe it's about who makes you feel alive." Her heart skipped. For a moment, time stood still. The fading light painted his face in soft gold, and she could see the boy he once was, and the man he had become. Claire looked away, her voice barely a whisper. "Don't say things like that, Ethan." He hesitated. "Why? Because it's wrong, or because it's true?" The question lingered in the air like the echo of thunder after a storm. Claire stood abruptly, her heart pounding. "I'm going to make dinner," she said, trying to steady her voice. She walked inside without looking back, afraid he'd see the tears forming in her eyes. That night, as she lay awake in bed, she could still feel his gaze, his words, the weight of something unsaid pressing against her chest. She wanted to forget it, to bury it deep inside. But she couldn't. Something inside her had awakened, something that scared her more than loneliness ever had. And as rain began to fall softly against the window, Claire realized the truth she couldn't admit. She wasn't just missing love anymore. She was starting to feel it again. Only this time, it was from someone she was never supposed to love that way. Claire turned off the light, but sleep never came. Because deep down, she knew something sacred had been crossed, and there was no going back. What happens when comfort starts to feel like temptation? The morning after that storm, Claire tried to pretend nothing had changed. She made pancakes, asked about Ethan's university, and forced her usual cheerful tone. But her hands trembled when she poured the coffee. Every time she looked at him, she saw that question in his eyes. "Do you ever miss being loved?" And it unsettled her. She told herself he didn't mean it that way. He was just young, emotional, missing connection. But deep inside, she knew better. Something had quietly shifted between them. Can silence hide what the heart already knows? Ethan stayed longer than usual that weekend. He fixed the garden gate, replaced the broken porch bulb, and even helped her repaint the living room. It felt nice. Too nice. Claire caught herself laughing again, feeling light for the first time in years. But every moment they spent together made it harder to ignore the invisible current between them. His compliments felt warmer, his eyes lingered longer, and when their hands brushed, neither moved away quickly anymore. One evening, they sat together going through old family albums, photos of birthdays, trips, smiles frozen in time. Ethan stared at one picture of his parents, young, happy, holding each other. "He never deserved you," Ethan said suddenly. Claire's chest tightened. "Don't say that about your father." He looked at her, voice soft but firm. "It's true. He left you broken. You've done everything alone, and he doesn't even look back." She wanted to argue, but tears blurred her vision. Ethan reached out and gently wiped one from her cheek. His touch was careful, respectful, yet full of something deeper. "You're still beautiful," he whispered without thinking. Claire froze. The words hung in the air, too heavy, too real. She felt her heartbeat quicken. Her instinct screamed to step back, but her heart didn't move. For a moment, time stood still, just the two of them, caught in the soft ache of what shouldn't be. What if crossing the line starts with a single glance? The next morning, the air between them felt heavy. They spoke less. Claire busied herself with cleaning. Ethan helped without saying much. Every shared silence was louder than words. When he reached for a box above the cabinet, she instinctively steadied his arm, and that brief contact sent a rush through her, sharp and confusing. That evening, Claire sat alone in the backyard, trying to find peace in the sound of crickets. Ethan joined her quietly. The sky was painted in pink and gold. "You make this house feel alive," she said softly. He turned to her. "Because you make me feel like I belong somewhere again." Their eyes met, and for the first time, neither of them looked away. The line they'd both been afraid of suddenly felt invisible. Claire's heart raced as she whispered, "You should get some rest." But Ethan didn't move. His voice was low, almost trembling. "I don't want to." Claire's breath caught. She stood to leave, but when she turned, his hand brushed hers, and neither of them let go. Can love born from pain ever be pure? Claire couldn't sleep that night. The sound of the ticking clock grew louder with every second, matching the rhythm of her racing heart. She kept seeing Ethan's face in her mind. The look in his eyes, the warmth of his touch, the quiet things he didn't say. She told herself it was a mistake, that emotions could confuse anyone. But the truth scared her. Something inside her had awakened, something she couldn't control. How do you run from feelings that live in your own home? The next morning, the silence between them was unbearable. They moved around each other carefully, like strangers sharing the same space. Ethan barely spoke. Claire pretended not to notice, but her heart ached at the distance. She wanted to fix things, to make them normal again. But how do you fix something you can't name? By noon, Ethan began packing his things to return to the city. Watching him fold his clothes, Claire felt an ache she couldn't explain. "You're leaving early," she said, trying to sound casual. He didn't look up. "It's better this way." She swallowed hard. "Because of last night?" He paused, then said softly, "Because I don't trust myself anymore." His words cut through her. She stepped closer. "Ethan, don't say that. You haven't done anything wrong." He finally met her eyes. "Then why does it feel like we did?" The air between them grew heavy again. Claire could see the struggle in his face, the guilt, the confusion, the sadness. She wanted to comfort him, to remind him that love didn't have to mean crossing lines. But her voice trembled when she said, "You're young. You'll meet someone who makes you happy." He smiled sadly. "What if I already did?" Her breath caught. For a second, everything around her stopped. She wanted to tell him to stop, to take it back. But she couldn't, because deep down, a part of her wanted to hear it. Ethan turned away quickly, picking up his bag. "I can't stay here right now," he said quietly. "I don't want to hurt you." "You're not," she whispered. But he didn't answer. Is distance the cure for a feeling that already lives inside you? When Ethan walked out the door, Claire stood frozen, her heart breaking and her conscience screaming. She watched him drive away until his car disappeared at the end of the road. Only then did she sit down, covering her face as tears finally fell. She had lost her husband years ago. But losing her son's closeness felt like losing a piece of her soul. As the evening light faded, Claire whispered to the empty room, "We didn't mean to feel this way." But the silence answered her back. Once love is awakened, it never truly leaves. That night, as she closed her eyes, her phone buzzed, a message from Ethan. "I can't stop thinking about you." Is forgiveness possible when the heart disobeys? Months passed in quiet distance. Claire tried to rebuild the rhythm of her life, morning walks, tending her flowers, reading books she never finished. But peace never truly returned. Every song, every sunset, every silence reminded her of Ethan. She told herself he needed space, and so did she. But some absences echo louder than presence, and his absence filled every corner of her home. How do you move on when memories keep holding your hand? Autumn arrived. The leaves turned gold, and the air carried a chill that whispered of change. One evening, as she sat by the window, lost in thought, a familiar knock startled her. When she opened the door, there he was, Ethan, standing quietly, a little older, a little more tired. "I didn't think you'd come," she said softly. He smiled faintly. "I wasn't sure you'd want me to." They sat in the living room where it had all begun. The silence was no longer tense. It was tender. Time had softened the sharp edges of what they once felt. Ethan spoke first. "I've thought about that night 1,000 times. I kept trying to hate myself for it, but I couldn't. I just missed you." Claire looked at him, her eyes gentle but firm. "We were both broken, Ethan. We just found comfort in the wrong place." He nodded slowly. "I know. I used to think love meant holding on. Now I think it means letting go, before it hurts someone." She smiled through tears. "You've grown," he laughed softly. "Maybe because of you." The firelight flickered between them, warm and golden, as if forgiving the shadows of the past. There was no tension now, only understanding, the kind that comes after pain, when both hearts finally accept what cannot be. Ethan reached into his pocket and pulled out a small photograph. The one of them from years ago, before the distance, before the silence. "This reminds me of who we really are," he said. "Family." Claire took the photo, her hand brushing his. This time it didn't sting or tremble. It felt peaceful, like closing a book after the last page. "You'll always have my love," she said softly. "Just not the kind the world misunderstands." He nodded, eyes glistening. "And you'll always be the person who taught me what real love means." Can love survive by changing its shape? They talked late into the night, about dreams, forgiveness, and the strange ways life tests the heart. When Ethan finally stood to leave, he hugged her tightly, a simple, pure gesture that healed more than words ever could. As the door closed behind him, Claire looked at the photograph again. The house felt lighter, the silence softer. For the first time in years, her heart didn't ache. It understood. Claire whispered to the empty room. "Some love isn't meant to end. It just learns where it belongs.